Hey, what's up? This is Tim with Studio 4 Media, and today we're going to be taking a look at creating this fracture text reveal. Alright, we got a lot of stuff to go through, so let's go ahead and get started. Inside After Effects here, let's go ahead and create a new composition. So go to Composition, New, and we're doing 1280 by 720. Hit OK. Go ahead and exit out of these ones. And let's just start by creating a new solid. Make comp size. We'll go ahead and turn this to white. Okay, so over here in Effect and Presets, we'll type in Vignetten, and we're looking for this Vignetten blind, so we'll just take that, drag it over, and right away you're not going to notice anything different, but let's go ahead and change the direction to about 40, and we'll change the width as well. And then transition completion, this is where you're going to start noticing that we get some lines going. And let's turn that width back down. So we have quite a few lines. Something like that there. Just to angle a little bit. So something like that. And we'll go ahead and make another new solid. And this one we're going to make kind of like a pale gray, light gray solid. Okay, and this is going to be underneath it, and you notice that now instead of being black like it was before, it's actually has the whatever color we put underneath it. So now it's a real nice subtle effect. Also, let's go ahead and create another new solid, and we'll make this one white. And this time we'll put a mask around it. We'll put it at the top. And we'll just use an ellipse mask and put it right in the center. Except we're going to feather it. If you hit F on the keyboard, it brings up the feather properties. Just feather it a lot. Just so we have a highlight in the middle our scene here. So something like that looks pretty good. And let's go ahead and go to the comp settings and just call this BG for background. That way we keep everything nice and organized. We know where it's at. Alright, let's create another composition, and we'll call this one background text. Make it the same size, and let's just take out the text tool and let's just type a whole bunch of different text. This is going to be our background text that you're going to see. If I'll show you here, you can see a whole bunch of different words in the background as we scroll through. It's all in the background here, so you can type whatever you want. I think I just typed some cheesy stuff like love, duplicate it by hitting Control D, then bring it over, type something like art. We can duplicate this, Control D, move it over here, and it's okay if we go off screen because this is going to be a 3D layer eventually, and so we kind of want it to be off the screen. We'll type this one and make this one be design maybe, and let's take this one and move it over here. Duplicate this again, maybe bring it up to the top here. let's call this one Passion. And you guys can name these whatever you want. This is just going to be the text in the background. Do this again by hitting Control D. Maybe bring it on this side. So once you have all the text you want, you notice here I added a couple more. What we're going to do is we're going to make them 3D layers. So if you can't see this little box here that makes it a 3D layer, go ahead and just hit toggle and switches, and it'll change it so you can see the 3D box. Once you turn that on for all of them, you have the ability to move them in 3D space. So you notice here I just, in the Z-axis, moved them up and back. This one here is up a little bit closer to the camera, just like this one is. So just move them in the Z space, so they're kind of just separated, and that way whenever the camera goes by it gives it a really nice look, and it makes it look really 3D. So once you have that done, what we're going to do is we're going to make a new comp, and just go to composition, new composition, and call this background text 2. And if you noticed here, I cleaned this up a little bit. I have a whole bunch of different folders, and I had a whole bunch of different comps just sitting there, and I like my workspace to be very clean. So whenever you make a new comp, if you assign it to a new folder, and you can make folders by right clicking and just hit new folder and then name it whatever you want. And once you have a new comp, you just click on it and drag it into the folder you want. So I have my tutorial folders here. So I have my background text, and now this new one we just made called background text 2. And what we're going to do is take our background text comp, drag it into the background text 2. Now you're going to notice that if we try to move this around, we can't see the other text because it's just all one comp, and we're going to fix that. So let's first create a new camera. So go to layer, new camera, and we'll just use a 35mm preset, hit OK. Now let's make our layer a 3D layer. So again, if you can't see that, just hit that toggle button down there and you just make it 3D. And if we go up here and zoom in and zoom out using the track zoom, you can notice that we still can't see our other text. Well, if we go down here and click this button, and if we zoom out, you're going to notice that we can see all of our text now. And we can move it around in 3D space, and you can see now, since we have them separated, and some of them are closer to the camera, some of them are farther away, it makes it look really cool with a really nice 3D effect. But what I want to do is assign these all a specific color. So right now they're kind of a dull gray, they don't pop out as much, and you guys can make this whatever color you want. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Effect, Generate Fill, and you notice right away it just has a red color. You can make it whatever color you want. You can give it a blue. You know, since what we're doing it for is just a real subtle in the background, I'm just going to put a white, but that way it just makes it pop out a little bit more. And all we're going to do is we're going to take this background text and duplicate it a couple more times and just move it around. And again, you just hit Control D or Command D if you're on Mac to duplicate, and just move it around until you think, you know, it looks good and it fills up the space. And we're also going to put some over here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put some more off screen, just like we did before with our background text comp. So because eventually we're going to see it, we'll be able to see it right now, but just, you know, space them out evenly, something like this here. And we can always make changes to these later once we actually see what they look like as the camera is scrolling across. So this looks pretty good, and you can see here now it fills up the space, and again you can just adjust these however you want. I think this is looking pretty good though. So next we're going to create a new composition, and this one's going to be for the text that comes across, the main text, this design right here, and then later on the different words you have coming together. So we'll go up to composition, new composition, just call this text 1, and we're going to make it 1280 by 250. So just enough space to put some text in here. You can put whatever you want. I put design, and you want to scale it up to fit almost the whole composition. Something like that. And what we're going to do is create another new composition, and this composition is going to be the same size as our other ones, which is the 1280 by 720. So the same size if you look at the composition settings here, 1280 by 720. So, and what we'll do is we'll take our text1 comp, if we go over here, put our text1 comp into our tutorial, and let's rename this comp1. Go to composition settings, and let's rename it to edit text. And we'll go ahead and move that down to our tutorial comps and put in our text1 comp into our edit text. And we'll go ahead and make it a 3D layer. And then what we'll do is create a mask. And it's going to be an angled mask, something like this here. Let's clean it up and make it look a little bit nicer. Maybe a little shorter. I don't know, something like this. And we want it to be in the middle of what our comp would be. And let's go ahead and go back to this text 01, move our text over to the left, and when we do that, you're going to notice that we can start to see it here. And we just barely want to be able to see the D, so like half of the D, something like that there. And let's really make this a really serious angle. And you want the angles to match on both sides. That looks pretty good right there. And now what we're going to do is animate this whole entire composition. So let's pull up the transform properties here, and we'll just hit the anchor point, the position, and let's go ahead and do the opacity while we're at it. And we have these keyframes set at 1.4 seconds, 1.5 seconds, something like that. And then what we'll do is go back to the beginning at 0 seconds and pull the composition up. And we're going to try to get the same angle on our animation as the angle of this mask. So just move it around. You don't want it to be off screen, you want it to be something like this here. And then if you watch our animation, it's going to come in just like that and stick. Now what we'll do is we'll take this position animation, we'll right click on the last keyframe, go down to keyframe assistant, and turn on easy ease. And you see here you can just go ahead and hit F9 to hotkey it to be an easy ease keyframe. And all that's going to do is slow down the animation so it's not going to hit so fast, and it'll make it look a lot better. Now we have one coming in from the top, and what I did in the original example was have them coming in from the top as well as from the bottom and alternate every other one. So let's go ahead and duplicate this. Before we do that, let's look at the opacity, because right now it's just on 100%, and we want it to be at 0% at 0 frames, and turn on at about a little past halfway through the entire animation. So from here to here is the entire animation. We want it to be a little bit past halfway, and that way when we play this back, there's nothing and it turns on and slides into place. Now that we have that, let's go ahead and take this text layer, duplicate it, and if we just push U on the keyboard, it's going to bring up all the different keyframes we have. And instead of keyframing it from the top, we're going to delete this keyframe, bring it down to the bottom, and now it'll animate from the bottom up top. But we want to move our mask so it's not showing 2Ds. So we'll just select our top layer here, double click our mask, move it over, and you see it's going to slide up like this. Now we're going to zoom in and make sure that we have it exactly lined up, because if we don't, you notice there's going to be a gap. So let's zoom in and make sure we get it right on. Right there, looks pretty good. Now when we play this back, you're going to see be nothing, and they both slide into place. And so now we have this bottom one coming from the top, the second one coming from the bottom. So we'll duplicate the one coming from the top, bring it to the top of our layers, and move the mask over to here, and make sure they're lined up. And I think that right there looks pretty good. And it looks like I accidentally added another keyframe. So again, just by hitting U on the keyboard when you have that layer selected, I identified the keyframe here. Just go ahead and delete it so it sticks. And we do have a little bit of a gap, so let's go ahead and close that. Just like that. And again, make sure when you're moving the entire composition, you have your cursor right on the keyframe so it'll move the keyframe as well. That looks pretty good. And we probably only have one more to go, so we'll take the middle one, which is coming from the bottom, because now we have two coming from the top, one from the bottom, so we need another one here from the bottom. Duplicate that, bring it to the top of our composition, move our mask over, and make it so it lines up. Go ahead and hit U on the keyboard, line up our cursor with our last frame, and zoom in so we can make sure we have it perfect match. And right there looks pretty good, I think. Let's see what that looks like. Nope, let's go ahead and move the mask a little bit further because we're getting a duplicate G. Let's try that. And that looks pretty good. So now we have the word design coming in at different angles, snapping together, but it doesn't look that good because they're all coming in at the same time. So what we'll do is just take every other composition and let's just move it forward slightly so we offset the animations, and when we play that back it's going to look a lot better. Let's see what it looks like. Alright, so it's looking pretty good. Okay, what I did was I went ahead and used the same technique for this design text and added it to our other text that we're going to have in our final composition. I just didn't want to waste any more time with repeatability and going over this same thing again. You guys should be able to do it by yourself. So we have the beyond repair text and this that is text. And we only have one more piece of text that we need to create for our final composition, and that is the fracture text. So let's go ahead and make a new composition. 940 by 200 is fine. Call this fracture text. And take the text tool and make our fracture text. Go ahead and scale it up. And I'm going to be showing you guys a really simple yet effective technique that's going to allow your text to have some depth and also some really nice, highlights and shadows. But it's not going to slow down our computer, and it's really easy and fast to create. And all you do is go to Layer, Layer Styles, Bevel and Emboss, and you can see it's already starting to get a couple highlights there and some shadows on the inside, and you can change around the options here. Go down to the Bevel and Emboss tab and change the style from Inner Bevel to Pillow Emboss. And there you can see we have a little bit more sharp edges. And let's go ahead and turn up the depth here to about 400 or so. And then what we can do is we can change the highlight color to like a light blue. And there you go. Incredibly fast and simple, but you can see we have nice highlights on our text. It looks 3D, got some depth to it, and it's not going to slow down our computer whatsoever. So now all we have left to do is do the exact same thing that we did over here when we have the masks coming together for our fracture text, and we are gonna start compiling this all together. Alright, we are ready to start compiling all of the different elements that we have already made into one main comp. So I've already made this comp right here, and here are the composition settings. It's just 1280 by 720, and I've made a new camera and put it in the scene, and the camera settings are just a 35mm camera. So if you take all of our different elements, let's go ahead and start with our background, and let's put in some background text. And you're not going to be able to see it probably because it's white. I think I remember there's a couple different ways you can change this. You can go back into your original text and change the colors, but we're just going to go to, with the background text selected, go to Effect, Color Correction, Tint, and whatever color we change this to is the color that the text is going to be. So just a dark gray, just enough so you can see it, is good. Let's go ahead and scale it up to something like this. And then we're going to apply a blur to it. So Effect, Blur and Sharpen, do Lens Blur. And that looks pretty good. Let me bring it down just a little bit, but all in all, not too bad. And we want it to be a little bit bigger because remember our camera is going to be going this way. In fact, I've already got some keyframes set on the camera so you can see it's just going to be panning if we turn this on a 3D layer. So it just pans this way. Make sure you have your layers 3D, and that way when your camera moves, the layers actually move with it. Now you don't want to have your background layer be 3D, because if you had that and we put it into position, then it would move along with the camera and you'd have to have a really, really big background, and we don't want that. So just that's not going to be 3D. There's a couple other things that won't be 3D as well, but we'll get into that later. Mainly just your text is what you want to be moving in the background. Okay, so we have our background text there. Let's go ahead and import some other elements we've made, like our first text, which is the design. Make it a 3D layer. And actually, I don't even think this is the one we... Yeah, let's delete that. It's edit text. Yeah, there it is. I can do a 3D layer. I'm going to show you what I did, how I animated the camera here in a little bit, so don't worry about that. I just went ahead and did it to save some time. It's just really, really simple keyframes, but I'll show you how I did that here in a second. So basically it's just panning in X space. Just to the right. And then it pauses, it just goes a little slower while the text comes together so you can read it, and then it zips off fast, stops for the next text, and it'll zip off fast, stop for the next text. So this is looking pretty good. Design comes in, stays for a little bit, and then you'll notice if we keep going, our background text is not big enough, and all we have to do is duplicate it and move it over. And we're probably going to want to do that a couple times, because by the time we get done with our reveal, I think we're going to be way over here. Yeah. So now we have that background always there, and you can do a couple things to mess with the, change it up a little bit so it's not as, the same. You can overlap them. That looks pretty good. You can move them up and down. So that's looking better. Let's go ahead and import some of our other text that we have. And we'll change that back to the regular color. I want this one to come in as we pause. So we have the design come in, then this kind of pauses. So let's go ahead and scale it up. And let's make sure that the animation doesn't start until probably once it's paused, it's basically come together. So we gotta make it a 3D layer too, so we're gonna have to redo all that. That's okay though. That's probably why it was a little bit smaller than it needed to be. Yeah. So we're paused, we're looking at it, then it'll zip away. So we want to make sure as it's coming together as it's being panned to it. Just a little bit before. Alright, so we have design, zip away. That'll zip away, and we need one more. Make sure we make it a 3D layer. Let's change that back. That's not the right one. Text 04. I must have forgot to add that to our tutorial comps. That's alright. I think it's under these here. Text 04. Add that in. Right between those two. We'll turn this one off for now. Change this back to the right color. And here it is. Make sure we're in the right spot. The spot that's slowed down for us. Right about here. Make it a 3D layer. And we'll scale it down a little bit. I think our that is text is a little bit too big. You want the text to kind of be the same size throughout the entire animation. And our fracture text can go over here. Turn that back on. Scale it down. And for this text, I decided not to have the background text in the way, so you can kind of just focus on this being the only text in the screen. So that's looking pretty good. And maybe this is just a little bit too big. Scale that down. Scale this one up. If you hold shift, by the way, as you're scaling, it's going to keep it uniform so you don't get it stretched out like this. Just hold shift when you scale it up. Alright, that's looking pretty good. We have our text being placed. And I think the colors are a little bit off. This design is pretty dark. This, that is a little bit lighter. So if we go back in to our text and just change the color a little bit darker, okay, you'll notice that it changes in here. Maybe just a tad more. And you get the idea. You can do that as much as you want, perfect it and tweak it as much as you want. Line them up, and yeah, it's looking pretty good. Now let's go ahead and change a little bit of the colors here. It's pretty bright, and so let's change that just a little bit. Just go ahead and make a new solid, black solid, make comp size, hit OK, and let's just double click the ellipse tool. Puts a ellipse around our composition, and if we just change that to subtract and hit F on the keyboard and feather it out, it darkens it up and puts a nice vignette around our comp, and then we can just hit T and turn that on the opacity to get it to something we want. Let's tone down that feather just a little bit so we can increase the opacity there. So that right there makes a huge difference, makes it look a lot better, and it really focuses on where the text is, and everything else outside of that is out of focus, and you can see the difference here. It even highlights your diagonal lines a little bit. Alright, so we're looking really good. Next, let's go ahead and add a little bit more color correction and add those broken glass shards that make this fracture reveal look really cool. Alright, if we look at the end here, you can see that our fracture text looks pretty flat. It doesn't really have the depth we were wanting it to have, and that's because it's it's behind a white background, and so we can change that by putting a couple shadows on it. All you have to do is go to our fracture text, duplicate it, and we'll rename this shadow. And we probably had better rename all these too. Fracture. All you do is hit enter on the keyboard and you can rename these. With the shadow one selected, go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, CC Radial Fast Blur. And you can see it's coming out at us kind of crazy. All we got to do is change what direction this is going. We kind of want it to go down off to the side like this, and make sure your shadow is below your fracture. And then if we change the color of this by going to color correction tint, changing it to black, we have a really nice shadow that makes those pop out again. So you can see without that shadow really flat, and that really makes it pop out. You could even duplicate the shadow, make it a little bit more profound, and you can change the direction that this thing is pointing. Change it this way if we want. So you kind of got it going off in both angles here. So kind of coming off this way and coming off that way. And that'll make it look a lot better as it comes together and those are moving. Now what we can do is add some glass shards or fractures at the end. And this is a really cool technique that can be used for a multitude of different things, and it's really simple to do. All you do is create a new adjustment layer, and over here in the effects and presets, we just type in transform. Add that to our adjustment layer, and make sure we make a mask. And you're just going to make a triangle mask, really anywhere, in the shape of that you want your glass shard to be. I want this to kick on right about here. Yeah. And we can animate this mask. So just go to the mask path, set a keyframe at the very end, maybe just have it rotate, and maybe scale up, like so. And then all we do is take this transform and increase the scale. And you can see that's going to make it distort the image. And as it's distorting that image, it makes it look like you're looking through a piece of broken glass. And so then you just duplicate this adjustment layer as many times as you want and change the mask path properties. Let's make it start over here this time and rotate it. Maybe coming down. And as it ends, let's go ahead and delete this keyframe so we can change the ending up. We'll have it rotate the opposite direction, like this. Maybe even come down a little bit. And the cool thing is you can create as many of these as you want until you get the look you want. And as they intersect, they kind of play off one another, kind of scale differently, and you can get some really cool looks. And you just keep duplicating this as many times as you want and just changing those animations up. If you hit U on the keyboard, that'll pull up any keyframes you have for that layer, so you can change them pretty fast. Maybe we'll have one coming from this corner up here. And start off maybe kind of big and then get smaller. Now you don't want to go too crazy because you want to be able to still read the text, but you get the idea. And you can even mess with the scale properties a little bit, so some of them can be really blown up, some of them can just be a little bit. however you want to do it. And I think maybe one more ought to do it. Duplicate that, hit U on the keyboard. Change the animation a little bit. One more right in the middle. We'll really boost up the scale. Turn over there and move it this way. Let's take a look at that. That's looking pretty good. And that's how you create those glass shards. It's fairly simple, and you can use it for a lot of different things, and you can see the possibilities you can have with this technique. So there's that, and we're almost done. And I think you know, at the last or the original example, I had some flares, so we can create those real fast. Make another solid, call this flare, and go to Video Copilot, Optical Flares, Options, maybe something that has a pretty big iris. This one here is not bad. Hit OK. Change the transfer mode to add. I think I put it up here like this. Now if we make this a 3D layer, so it starts out kind of simple. As it comes in, start to see that, and let's put a ring around this as well. Feather it out so that way you don't have that harsh edge whenever it's coming in. And then as it's fading away, we can duplicate this, drag it over to here, except change the position to this way. So it's kind of like looks like it's changing positions. And you can even get it to where it's right on it, really bright. If you change this color to a bluer color, since that's kind of what we're going with. Maybe even turn the brightness down a little bit, because that's pretty overpowering right now. There you go. And then this one here too, change that to a bluer color. And that's basically it. You can add one more flare if you want on this one here, just a simple flare. Let's duplicate it, bring it over here, so we keep that blue color. Maybe we'll turn the brightness up, change the position around a little bit. I don't know, something like this. So you keep that blue look. It looks pretty good. Anyway, my name is Tim Weaver. Thanks for tuning in to this tutorial. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. And be sure to check out our other tutorials on studio4media.com, and we'll see you next time.